Happy almost Halloween, everyone. It's been about 2-ish weeks since the World Cup qualifiers, so let's do a quick review of them, shall we? And by quick review, I mean like 30 minutes, shall we? This is the final window for this round of African qualifiers, so we will be seeing a lot more nations qualifying, and some drama regarding the playoffs. Because last time we left off, this was what the runners-up table for the playoffs was looking like, with the top 4 advancing being Gabon, Madagascar, DR Congo, and Burkina Faso. However, this table is no longer accurate because CAF has now determined that matches against the 6th place team would not count. This now means the top 4 is Gabon, Cameroon, DR Congo, and Benin. Burkina Faso and Madagascar supporters, you can thank the Eritrean government for this one. Group A was pretty much Egypt for the taking, and they officially returned to the World Cup after a 4-year absence with a 3-0 win in their first game of the window. Now it all came down to the fight for the playoff spot, currently held by Burkina Faso. Sierra Leone and Guinea-Bissau hypothetically still had a chance, but it probably wouldn't be enough to actually secure a spot. So all the pressure was on Burkina Faso to win out the remaining games, and they did so, beating Ethiopia and the country whose flag has the same design as the Family Mart logo. I spent about an hour editing all of Group B last month. Thank God that won't be the case this time around. With the Spurs of Africa fumbling a 2-0 lead at home, again, Senegal now returned to the top, and they would not give it back as they won out their last 2 games to qualify automatically. However, DR Congo was at least able to lock in a playoff spot after they too won out both of their remaining fixtures. Group C was absolute chaos, and it was only about to get so much crazier. At the end of last month's window though, South Africa were at the top, but only 3 to 4 points were between them and 4th place. And there were still some massive games in October that would decide a lot of things. Benin vs Rwanda, Benin vs Nigeria, and Rwanda vs South Africa. But before anything could actually even start, Benin pointed out a recent controversy surrounding South Africa and an ineligible footballer that played for Lesotho. They demanded CAF dock points from South Africa, and that request was fulfilled not too long after. So going into October, Group C looked a bit different with South Africa and Benin now tied on points. This point deduction also gave Nigeria and even Rwanda a chance to qualify automatically. Whether it was automatic or playoffs though, for Nigeria to keep their hopes alive, they more than likely had to win both of their games. And they did well with their first match versus Lesotho, but did try to find a way to fuck it up in the very end. Meanwhile in Rwanda, Benin got the weirdest late winner you might ever see. It was so odd that the cameras barely even caught what happened, but either way, Benin grabbed a crucial victory for their fight. Meanwhile, for Bafana, Zimbabwe had nothing to play for, but because they hated South Africa so much, they did everything in their power to hold them to a draw. And with that result, this now saw Benin top of the group going into the final match day. But remember when I mentioned that it was Benin who forced CAF's hand regarding South Africa? Well, don't you think it was a little suspicious to bring that up late into the campaign when they were only 3 points from automatic qualification? Yeah, South Africa didn't appreciate that at all. Not to mention, Benin's neighbors/rivals Nigeria were also their last opponents. So now all of a sudden, this small nation that no one even thought about months prior were now having their downfall being preyed upon by at least 500,000 South Africans and Nigerians. Because if Nigeria could beat Benin, that would mean South Africa could qualify automatically if they beat Rwanda. South Africa did the first bit of business with a more than convincing victory versus Rwanda. So now it was up to Nigeria to do the dirty work to send South Africa to the big dance, but they also needed to absolutely incinerate Benin in order to steal the playoff spot themselves. And luckily for the Nigerians, Victor Osimhen was certainly up for that task as he scored a hat-trick in less than an hour and single-handedly saved Nigeria from embarrassment. Someone built this guy a statue in Lagos already. Oh god, after all this madness, I need a break, you know. I think now is a good time to maybe, indulge in some old Eurovision performances. Oh wait, I can't do that because in the United States, we don't have access to any of that. Thank you, NBC. If only there was a way to surf the web and avoid the sharks that prevent me from watching Europapa official semi-final performance on YouTube. Well, we can now all thank our lucky stars because Surfshark can do just that. With one flip of a switch, I can change my location from the United States to, I don't know, Lithuania. And boom, now I can rewatch the phenomenal performance of Bridges by Alika or Slow-Mo by Chanel. This is all possible because with Surfshark, you can access region-locked content anywhere in the world thanks to its over 3,200 servers in 100 different countries. Also, you notice how whenever a cafe password is revealed to you, you usually think to yourself, Yeah, I probably could have guessed that, actually. I think that really puts into perspective just how unsafe these Wi-Fis can be. But Surfshark also uses humanized privacy and security solutions to safeguard your data, meaning you can now browse with any dodgy Wi-Fi safely without any stress of someone stealing your personal information. So, have I got you excited now? Well, if so, you can use my link displayed on the video or in the description to get Surfshark for an extra 4 free months. And there is no risk in trying this out because Surfshark has a 30-day money-back guarantee. So use my link surfshark.com/Mac to access region-locked content anywhere in the world and keep your private information safe. And a big thank you to Surfshark, as always, for sponsoring this video. Over in Group D, we were so close to witnessing history as Cape Verde was just 1 win away from qualifying for the World Cup for the first time in their history. They had their party initially spoiled by Libya, but they couldn't possibly fuck it up versus Eswatini. And after a 3-0 win versus the GeoGuessr Merchants, Cape Verde officially becomes the second smallest nation to ever qualify for the World Cup. Cameroonians will not be happy about their chain being snatched by a country made of 10 islands, but with 4 points earned this month, it's enough to seal a spot in the playoff round. With Morocco already qualified, it all came down to Tanzania seeking a spot in the playoffs. That was quite literally impossible though, because they only had 1 game remaining, which wouldn't be enough to catch up to anyone. And even then, we're getting too ahead of ourselves here, because they'd need to win that game. Which they didn't. No one else was able to advance, but credit to Niger, who won out their last 2 fixtures, with Daniel Sosa catching fire with 3 goals in his last 3 qualifiers. Group F had everyone eliminated from qualifying besides Ivory Coast and Gabon, who were both already confirmed at least the playoffs. Ivory Coast, who still have yet to concede a single goal, tore apart the Seychelles 7-0. By the way, I got bored one time, and as a normal person does when they get bored, they look at the Seychelles national team's results history. Yeah, did you guys know that they haven't beaten an African team in 9 years? Now you do. Anyways, Ivory Coast officially confirmed their return to the tournament for the first time since 2014 after beating Kenya. Gabon, on the other hand, had 36-year-old Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang carry them with 4 goals to secure a win. Another African side that hasn't seen the tournament since 2014 was Algeria, but they finally returned as well after comfortably beating Somalia. And unfortunately, no matter what anyone else in this group could do, it wouldn't be enough for a playoff spot. Uganda, you did everything you could in this final stretch. Unlucky. Tunisia had already claimed Group H while everyone else was eliminated because they mathematically couldn't be one of the top 4 runners-up. I mean shit, after the rules changed about how points were counted for this, Namibia was ranked last. Lastly, we have Group I, where Ghana were so close to qualifying for a 2nd straight tournament. They inched even closer after a pummeling of Central African Republic, and then finally booked their ticket thanks to a single goal from Mohamed Kudus. Second place Madagascar entered this month with the chance to shock many and steal a playoff spot on the final day. They started October being Comoros in a torrential downpour. Mali, however, saw this, said we hate fun, and proceeded to ruin Madagascar's hopes and dreams. Now that this round is over, let's quickly go over the 4 teams that have miraculously found another way to potentially qualify. Those teams are Gabon, DR Congo, Cameroon, and somehow Nigeria. There's no draws for this, by the way, because the matchups have already been decided. First seeded Gabon will play 4th seeded Nigeria, and 2nd seeded DR Congo will play 3rd seeded Cameroon. All I'm gonna say is, just like I did in the previous qualifier review, it could be absolute cinema come November. We are now into the 2nd window of 3 for European qualifiers, and tension and stakes are only going to get higher. Group A started with an early scare for the Germans after an opening loss for Slovakia, but like a Roki Sasaki playoff closer, they weren't fazed by the pressure and collected their 2nd win of the campaign versus Luxembourg. Meanwhile, the Slovakians shit the bed versus a team that hasn't been relevant since Will Greek in 2016.
I'm out of sync, I guess, because I didn't know you till today.
The Germans, on the other hand, were able to break down the Northern Irish thanks to a single goal from the most Australian-looking man you'll ever see. So much for that excitement. Thanks for nothing, guys. So at the end of the month, the Germans eased the stress after jumping from 3rd to 1st in the group. Slovakia was at least able to collect a win versus Luxembourg, so they sit tied on points. That result also means Luxembourg are already eliminated, which, like, damn, what the fuck, guys? I expected y'all to at least fight back. Don't count out 3rd place Northern Ireland, though. They play Slovakia next month, and if they can beat them again, all the pressure would be on Slovakia since they end the group with Germany, while Northern Ireland plays 0-point Luxembourg at home. Over to Group B, most people expected a dogfight between the Swedes and femboys, but they both started miserably. Nevertheless, new month, new slate. Now was time to rewrite all early failures. They say that despite Sweden being one of the happiest countries, their suicide rate is also one of the highest. and that's probably because of this defense. Sweden has 2 top 10 strikers in the world right now, and not even that can get them a result versus a nation in its 3rd ever World Cup qualification campaign ever. This is probably a good time to mention that not only is agent Jon Dahl Thomason Danish, he's also Denmark's all-time top scorer, and in Euro 2004, he did this versus Sweden. What the hell was the Federation thinking? Oh yeah, by the way, that suicide rate myth? Entirely made up by the American government. Meanwhile, Kosovo in the match prior put up a defensive masterclass for Slovenia to grab another point.
Up to you for keeping the shit very clean.
Thank you.
Only thank you.
No, thank you for the support.
This is no longer a fluke. Kosovo now sit in the playoff spot with a 4-point gap between them and 3rd place Slovenia, while Switzerland sit pretty 3 points above them, assured at least the playoffs. Group C was pretty close to start off, with Denmark and Scotland tied for the top, while one other nation was not too far off. And we knew since the Euro playoffs, Greece was on the up, and they made an even bigger statement silencing the Scottish crowd with an hour played. But just when we were all starting to believe in the Greek dream, they concede the equalizer just 2 minutes later, give up another goal, and then in the dying minutes, their keeper proceeded to do this shit. The Greeks then traveled to Copenhagen and saw their World Cup dreams burst into flames after just 41 minutes played. Going back to the top 2, they both played Belarus as well. Denmark put 6 past them, while Scotland was doing all they could to produce one of the most unconvincing wins a human being has ever seen. Anyways, now with everyone else eliminated, Denmark and Scotland remain in the top 2, and these guys will play each other in their last qualifiers next month to determine who qualifies automatically and who will have to go through hell to do it. Group D had France in first, with Iceland surprising many sitting above Ukraine, but again, it was way too early to say anything. The two nations, though, would face each other to start the window. After a horrendous start to the campaign, like usual, Ukraine started getting the ball rolling as they drew first blood. But Iceland weren't gonna let them by this easily and equalized 20 minutes later. However, then Ukraine finally decided to actually lock in and scored one right before and one right after halftime. Welcome to the playoffs, I guess. Not if Albert Gudmundsson has anything to say about that though, as he leads a quick comeback with just 15 minutes to go. But this does nothing in the grand scheme of things, as Ukraine thrive on the pressure and respond with 2 late goals to seal the deal. The Ukrainians then finished 6 of 6 for the window after getting their revenge versus the other genocide merchants. But it wasn't over for Iceland just yet, and they can thank France's Jules Koundé attempting a one-man offside trap for that one. France wasn't only playing diddy ball though. Against the other genocide merchants, Mbappe scored a ridiculous solo goal. And then for the 3rd goal, we saw this from Florian Thauvin of all people. This sees the French remain in first, with Ukraine 3 points behind them in the playoff spots. Although 3rd place Iceland can't be counted out yet, especially since Ukraine and Iceland play each other in their last qualifiers next month. Over to Group E, and even though only 2 games have been played so far, Spain are already pretty much confirmed automatic qualification. Not mathematically, they just are. Even without Lamine Yamal due to his dick being broken or something, Spain collected 6 of 6 points with ease. Meanwhile, after their embarrassing 6-0 loss at home, Turkey was determined to make a statement this month. And they definitely did that, as they feasted upon Bulgaria and then ripped Georgia to shreds. So after the October window, Spain are miles away, with Turkey sitting comfortably in a playoff spot. Georgia still has a chance, but with only 2 games remaining for everyone, they'd need to win out both of their games and see Turkey lose their remaining fixtures. Issue though, Germany still has to play Spain, and there's more of a chance that Gianni Infantino stops giving Donald Trump head than Bulgaria beating Turkey. Entering October, Group F saw Portugal 3 points clear at the top, with Armenia having a surprise appearance in the playoff spots. That did not last long, however, as Hungary, now hungry for points, beat the Armenians 2-0. Meanwhile in Lisbon, it would go all the way to the death until Portugal broke through Ireland's defense. And who else but Ruben Neves wearing his late friend Diogo Jota's number to be the one to do it. The struggles continued for Portugal at home though, as Hungary silenced the whole stadium just 8 minutes in. However, here comes Cristiano Ronaldo to the rescue, and the 40-year-old gives the Portuguese the lead right before halftime. This also means Cristiano Ronaldo is now the all-time leading World Cup qualifiers goal scorer. But we mustn't forget that whenever there are exactly 0 expectations for Hungary to perform, they actually do something. And Portugal probably didn't get that memo, as Dominic Szoboszlai saves his nation a point at the death. Meanwhile, Ireland were able to just keep their hopes alive after getting some revenge versus Armenia, with Evan Ferguson scoring his 3rd goal in his last 4 caps. So at the end of October, Portugal, despite some struggles, hold a 5-point lead at the top, while Hungary, Ireland, and Armenia will be going at it in a dogfight next month. Armenia versus Hungary kicks off November, while a potential runners-up decider between Hungary and Ireland happens later on. Group G had the Dutch on top with a game in hand, with Poland Poland hopping into second thanks to their bounce back window last month, which included a crucial revenge victory versus Finland. For Finland, their qualification hopes took a massive hit last month, so it was extremely important for them to win the 2 fixtures they had in October. And they started well, coming back from 1-0 down to beat Lithuania. But unfortunately, their second game was away in the Netherlands, and they were straight up demoralized by the 40th minute. The Dutch also collected another victory earlier in the window versus Malta. Meanwhile, Poland had only 1 game this window, but they made it count with a solid victory versus Lithuania. So as it stands, the Dutch remain in the lead with Poland 3 points behind them in the playoff spots. The two will play each other next month in Warsaw, but even if Poland win, the Netherlands' goal difference will probably break that tie. Since the beginning of Group H, it's been a waiting game for the inevitable. However, Bosnia has done an exceptional job at holding strong at the top, but Austria did just beat them last month and still have that damn game in hand, which they would finally play in this window and drop 10 on San Marino in the process. But Bosnia can still easily lock in the playoff spot as they score 2 early goals versus Cyprus, but then they ball the lead. It's fine though, Romania's basically out and they still have to play Austria. But you could kinda tell this was a different Romania when someone tried this shit in the first 15 minutes. And the Romanians didn't stop there. Faster than their hands to a wallet were their constant barrage of attacks. They then finally found the breakthrough in the 5th minute of stoppage time as they not only stunned the Austrians, but revived their campaign. With 2 more games remaining, this was great news for the Romanians. And also San Marino. Because of UEFA's constant need to implement the Nations League into everything, 4 of the best ranked Nations League group winners who don't finish top 2 will advance to the playoffs alongside the 12 runners-up finishers. Right now in order, that's Wales, Romania, Sweden, Northern Ireland, who would advance, while Moldova and San Marino miss out. So that means if 2 of those teams in the current top 4 finish runners-up next month, San Marino is in the playoffs. Realistically speaking, they would need Northern Ireland and Romania to lock in, and it just so happens that Romania is in their group. Not only that, Romania and San Marino play each other in their last respective qualifier. So if Romania can pull off a win versus Bosnia to start November, it would literally be in the best of San Marino's interest to concede as many goals as physically possible to give Romania a better goal difference off a possible tiebreaker. That's right, San Marino could actually advance to the playoffs with 0 points and a negative 100 goal difference. This is the shit the Nations League created. No one was looking more forward to destroying the genocide merchants than Erling Haaland.
ממי, למתי הזמנת את הבייביסיטר? אנחנו מאחרים.
From minute 1, Haaland was looking like Demon LeBron from the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals. He was out here treating opposing defenders as if it was the Israeli government seeing a toddler under the age of 1. This hate watch was so satisfying that I cannot even tell you how many times I've replayed Haaland pushing someone into an own goal and running off to celebrate as the defender writhes in pain. Put that shit in a niche film festival now! By halftime, it was already 3-0 and Haaland would add 2 more to cap off the first ever hat-trick to unite the world. Alright, Italy. I need you to lock in now. The Italians started their window winning 3-1 with Moise Kean once again bagging another goal. Unfortunately, he grabbed an injury shortly after scoring. Hopefully that doesn't fuck up their chances of qualifying like the last time they lost a key forward. Thankfully for the time being, the Italians still had Matteo Retegui. So Gianni, no need to worry about solving those complex geopolitical issues like banning Israel, because Matteo can do all that for you instead, as he scores a brace to officially put an end to the genocide merchants' hopes and dreams. Now looking at the table, it's just Norway and Italy left. These two play next month in Milan, but seeing how the goal difference is so far in Norway's favor, Italy may as well mentally prepare themselves for playoff hell for a 3rd straight time. Also, let's give those genocide merchants one last send-off. This clip is from last year's Euro playoffs, but considering it pissed off so many people before, I want to show it again.
Acaba!
Group J had North Macedonia hanging on to the top spot while Belgium was on their tail with the game in hand. And North Macedonia did exactly what they needed to do to stay there, holding Belgium to a 0-0 draw at home. But then they fucked it all up being held to a draw versus 4th place Kazakhstan. We can't have anything nice, man. Belgium, on the other hand, beat Wales 4-2, which finally saw them overtake North Macedonia for the automatic qualification spot. However, the North Macedonia still hold a 3-point lead for the playoff spot, but they only have 1 game in November versus Wales. I would build more hype for this matchup, but it literally doesn't matter. Both of these teams will advance because they won their Nations League groups. Similar to Group I, there was only one thing people were looking forward to in Group K: Serbia versus Albania. again. The initial matchup had an interesting build-up, but the actual match itself was pretty boring. But just like the first game in Albania, we once again saw some petty flag drama. This time though, Serbia just flat out refused to put any kind of Albanian flag in their stadium. Not only that, Serbian authorities even announced that no Albanian symbols would be allowed in the stadium. At all. Albania's national team didn't care too much though, because after scoring the only goal of the game, Raym and I ran straight towards the Serbian bench with a double eagle gesture, to which Serbians in the stands responded by singing the Balkans' most peaceful song, "Kill, kill the Albanians." Our sport has never been more back. Nationalistically, this is a monumental win for Albanians, and an even bigger one for their qualification hopes, because this now meant Albania was closer to locking in the playoffs, while Serbia was almost certainly down and out. Because while it's only a 1-point gap after Serbia was able to recover versus Andorra, Albania's next games are Andorra away and England at home. And for Serbia, they have Latvia at home, but also England away. Group L saw Croatia and Czechia tied on points, with the Croatians on top due to goal difference. The two played each other earlier in the campaign, where the Croatian unction destroyed Czechia. They went at it again this month in Prague, and Czechia was able to get a positive result to maintain their claim of the playoff spot. But of course, it couldn't be that easy, as in their second game, the Faroe Islands took the lead in the 67th minute. The Czechs struck back with an equalizer, but then just 2 minutes later, the Faroe Islands catch the keeper in no man's land, and a guy who had just come on 10 seconds prior scores the winner. And prior to this game, the Faroe Islands annihilated Montenegro 4-0 to complete a perfect window.
I will shred this universe down to its last atom.
Which now sees these Nordic minnows just a single point off a playoff spot. Unfortunately, their last game is in Croatia, while Czechia has a slam dunk match against Gibraltar at home. Oh, by the way, Montenegro has been so bad as of late that they gave Liechtenstein its first goal of the year, and it took until the 74th minute to find an equalizer. CONCACAF teams continued their conquest of seeking a spot in the US. Whether their visas will be accepted is another story. Going into October, the Dutch C team Suriname had a 1-point lead in Group A. El Salvador was able to clutch up versus Guatemala last month, so that saw them in the playoff spot. Third place Panama had a very underwhelming start to the campaign, so they really need to pick up the pace this month. But it only kept getting worse, with the Panamanians conceding right before halftime in El Salvador. Fortunately though, the goal was called back due to a foul in the build-up. Into the second half though, here comes El Salvador again, and somehow that didn't end up in the net. And they'd regret missing that, as Panama immediately went the other way and found the breakthrough, but it's offside. Wait, it isn't? Nonetheless, El Salvador continue to push, and finally a little fortune goes their way as they're awarded a penalty. Wait, what? Did the VAR van get hijacked or some shit? That is so obviously a handball. In the end, Panama's 12th man came through for them, and they collect their first win of the campaign. Suriname started the window, dominating Guatemala throughout the majority of the game, but a single defensive error costed them with just 15 minutes to go. However, in the stoppage time, Virgil Misijan with the utmost precision threads the needle to save the Dutch C team a point. Following that game was a matchup between Suriname and Panama, but the night before the game, Panamanian supporters were out in droves trying to disrupt the Suriname national team's sleep. Only problem, the national team was joining in on those vibes. Just 21 minutes into the match in Panama, Suriname made a statement that would be heard all around the region. Nonetheless, right at the death, Panama would spoil the party and save themselves a point. Meanwhile, in El Salvador, Guatemala was able to get some revenge with a single goal at the beginning of the second half. Because of Suriname's own fuck-ups and Panama stealing candy from a baby, the Surinamese lead at the top has entirely diminished, while Guatemala's 4 points keeps them in the hunt just a point away now. And El Salvador, who started this window second, had quite the reality check with 2 straight losses, sending them to last. Group B had favorites Jamaica on top after winning their first 2 games. Below them in the playoff spot was Curacao with their best ever chance to qualify, and they'll like those chances even more after upsetting Jamaica to start October. It really is the history of the Jamaica. Curacao Mania then continued into their following match, as it took just 19 minutes to score versus Trinidad. But then later in the second half, Trinidad's Tyrese Spicer would extinguish some of that fire, and the game would end 1 apiece. Meanwhile in Kingston, Jamaica bounced back versus Bermuda, and they can thank the Bermudan agent they hired right before the game. So despite Curaçao's triumph, they weren't able to capitalize, which means Jamaica is still top of the table. But the gap is now down to 1 point. On to Group C, and this was another interesting one where no one really knew who would prevail. So far though, Honduras was the only team to win a game last time out, so they sit first, while Costa Rica and Haiti are tied for the playoff spot, with Costa Rica breaking the tie because they've scored more goals. And so we begin.
Oh, and the lights have gone out.
And so we begin with Haiti versus Nicaragua, and for the Haitians, the lightning and torrential downpour were more of a threat than Nicaragua, as they easily take a W back home. Later that same night, Honduras and Costa Rica played, and I think both teams should be eliminated considering this was one of the worst matches I have ever seen. Both of those teams decided to start scoring goals in their second games though. Costa Rica looked the most convincing they have all campaign with a 4-1 win versus last place Nicaragua, but it would be Honduras to really shake things up as they make easy work of Haiti at home. That now sees both nations in the top 2 with Honduras holding the qualification spots. But sitting just a point from second though, it's not over at all for Haiti yet. Same can't really be said about Nicaragua though. Now officially down to 6 teams in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, Indonesia, and Iraq. 2 teams at the end of this window would qualify for North America. But even before a ball was kicked, FIFA announced that every game would be played in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, basically gifting them both home field advantage. But why not just do it like normal qualifiers? I mean, just have every nation host their own home games. Fuck 'em. That's why. Anyways, here's how this round works. There will be 2 groups with 3 teams each. Teams will play each other just once, and whoever finishes first in the group will qualify automatically. Qatar and Oman started Group A, and the hosts dominated, but in the end, they couldn't find the back of the net. 3 days later, Oman picked up an early advantage versus the UAE thanks to a good bit of fortune. But having missed the tournament through about 8 different playoffs over the years, the UAE was growing tired of the same shit. And after a barrage of attacks, they finally scored the equalizer and then accidentally found the winner. Accident or not though, it still counted, and that would eliminate Oman. And so it all came down to Qatar versus UAE in the neutral venue of Jassim bin Hamad Stadium located in Qatar. UAE, seeking to end an almost 40-year-long episode of suffering, took a few bites to start out, but it would be Qatar to find the breakthrough early into the second half. They added another goal later on to put the game to bed, as all UAE could do was grab a late consolation. And so once again, another legitimate achievement for the Qataris, while Emirati fans in the stands finally reached their breaking point and started rioting. Never let anyone tell you qualifiers are boring. On to Group B, which started with Indonesia versus Saudi Arabia. And it would be the Indonesians who struck first through a penalty in the 8th minute. However, the Saudis quickly realized that it was way too easy to break down a Patrick Kluivert-led squad, and they equalized just 6 minutes later. Then, with a little over half an hour played, Saudi Arabia draw themselves a penalty and take the lead. Now seeing his team losing, Patrick Kluivert didn't even think to change anything, and again Saudi Arabia would punish Indonesia in the 62nd minute. Indonesia did manage one more goal late on, but it wouldn't be enough as Project Airfanad 2.0 is off to a flying start in the round. Iraq then entered the picture 3 days later to play the Dutch East Indies. While the Iraqis weren't performing very well, they were luckily up against Patrick Kontol, who's quite experienced in killing things. And in the 76th minute, former United Academy player Zidane Iqbal would score the winner. Thank you, Iraq, and fuck you, George Bush. Now you may be wondering, Maxwell, this is kind of tame. You're not really clowning on Indonesia that much. Oh, don't worry, I made a whole video about it. Anyways, now it all came down to Saudi Arabia versus Iraq in the neutral venue of King Abdullah Sports City Stadium, located in Saudi Arabia. And it ended in a 0-0 draw. Congrats to the Saudis for qualifying for a 3rd straight World Cup. What a big surprise to us all. Don't worry though, Emiratis and Iraqis, your hopes are still alive in this never-ending gauntlet of second chance rounds. Next month, you will participate in a 2-legged playoff. The winner does not automatically qualify. Instead, they advance to the Intercontinental Playoffs. It never fucking ends. And so that was your World Cup qualifiers October review. But before we go, let's quickly go over all of the countries that have officially qualified for the World Cup, because there are plenty more to add here. Japan became the first non-host nation to qualify on March 20th, 2025. Followed by them was New Zealand on March 24th, 2025. Then you had Iran and Argentina on March 25th, 2025. Into June, Uzbekistan, South Korea, and Jordan all qualified on June 5th. 5 days later, Australia joined them. And on the same day as the Aussies' 6th straight berth, both Brazil and Ecuador qualified. Then on September 4th, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Colombia all qualified through the remaining automatic spots. 1 day later, Morocco qualified as the first African nation. Tunisia joined them on September 8th. Then in October, we had a bunch qualify from Africa. It all began on the 8th with Egypt, which were followed by Algeria the very next day. Ghana qualified 3 days later on the 12th. Cape Verde made history just 1 day later. And then on the 14th, this round of African qualifiers ended with South Africa, Ivory Coast, and Senegal all booking a ticket. On the same day, Asia saw 2 more representatives in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, while England became the first European nation to qualify for 2026. All these guys now join the US, Mexico, and Canada, which now leaves us with just 20 spots up for grabs, and come the end of November, we'll be seeing plenty more European nations. But until then, has your team qualified? Are they close to qualifying? You know what I'm going to say here. But of course, a massive shout out to all our members, including Janos Balas, Sherman Sayu 7, Jeremiah Owusu Ajimang, Brazilian Fury, Django, Anazir Makalankam, Alex Rod, Kentra Agantra, St. Terrence, Sylvia Citrus, Raspberry Enthusiast, Cheesebait, Winder Gel, Finn Likes Rugby More, Davox, The Portergeyser, Wise Orange, Polo Protos, Von Fan, Lucian Von Croix, A Ghostly Owl, Coney Wolves, Lickstab, Maitanai, Apollo, Congo Jazz 1, Thrilling ADT 13, Los Milos, La James Braun, Vecino, Napside, Money Cash Host, Quantavious Pork, Lilia Lover, Stewed Monk, Red Yellow, Kevin Mojica, Fuxi, MX Sand, Harry Maguire's Left Toenail, Flaquito, Kev Z, Dominic Griffin, Kyler Krebs, Mohammed Al Tanib, Niche, Patrick Barley, Raspberry God 5, Raspberry Ale, and Unbroken Persona. If you'd like to become a member on the channel, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow my Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow my Twitch. Like I said before, World Cup draws will be happening in December. Definitely will be doing a live stream for that, so watch out for that one. But until then, I'll see you guys.